Hey, thank you so much for hearkening to my request. Yeah, I'm Pamela Tukundile and I'm your today's session chair. And our theme, our theme is student competencies in African universities. Because our time is fast spent, I won't go into details that much. So I would just say that the student competencies can be understood as knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors that students are expected to acquire during their academic programs. Some of them are the cognitive competencies. We look at the soft skills, ethical competencies, and those are some of the few that I can mention. So on our program, a few people have confirmed to present to us this afternoon. We shall have Sibongile Arnar, Charlotte Tucker, and Thokozani E. Nzimakwe from University of KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah, these three are going to present this paper together. So, can you hear me? They can? Okay, so now that you can hear me, I'm giving us 20 minutes for the presentation. So we all have the 20 minutes if we are all going to present. So ladies and gentlemen, join me welcome our first presenters. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Pamela. I hope you can hear me. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Speaking here is Sibongile, and we are from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban, South Africa. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to allow us to share with you some of the insights that we're getting from the work we're doing in this part of the world. First thing, obviously, you will note is from our original plan, as researchers, we intended to do a hermeneutic phenomenological study. However, as we embarked on this, we realized that doing a narrative literature review would give us the latitude that we would need going forward with the work that we intend to do. And so we're going to be exploring the influence of trauma on ethical theory understanding in public administration education. And why public administration education? Because we are working within the domain of public administration. Why this review is important? The question is, why then did we find this review to be essential? First of all, we found, as we embarked on this, that the review would provide an examination of the current pedagogical approaches to teaching ethical theories, such as deontology, utilitarianism, and virtue ethics within South African public administration education. And secondly, it would highlight the gaps, the current gaps in research that fail to address the intersection that we find of intergenerational trauma and ethics education, particularly in post-colonial contexts, such as the one that we are operating in. And next, we discovered that our review definitely would underscore the importance of developing context-specific theories that can better equip students with the ethical tools necessary for public service in a country such as ours and in a context such as ours. And so given that much of the existing, what we found is that much of the existing literature focuses on either trauma or ethical theories, but this is done independently. And there is a clear gap in exploring how these domains actually intersect in the educational setting and what the implications are to us and also to the students that we teach. Now, obviously, this study and this inquiry came out of what we had been observing in our students as we taught them about public service, and as we taught them about ethics, and what their responses were within the lectures, in discussions, and as well as in the assignments that they were given. Now, just to shed some light on what we embark to do and what our aim is really when we're talking about ethics education. And it's for the purpose of equipping students with the knowledge, skills that are necessary for them to navigate complex moral issues. And I'm sure all of us can agree that the moral issues that we face today are complex, and to equip our students to make better ethical decisions and contribute more positively to the society. So we're looking at ethical theory, we're looking at ethical decision-making, we talk about professional ethics, and we also cover the domains of social and global ethics as well. And so as we found, and as that we were meeting a lot of challenges based on the feedback that we're getting from our students, we decided to ask ourselves the question, so what does it take for the teaching to actually have effect? What do we need to do? And why we're really particularly concerned is because of what we're seeing happening in our public sector in South Africa. And I'm sure this has been the observation, not just within South Africa, but across our continent. It's popular to find that our public sectors are grappling with poor governance and poor ethical conduct. And most of the research does highlight that there's a lot of conflict of interest, the issues of nepotism, favoritism, the lack of transparency being the problems, mismanagement of funds, the abuse of power, and the failure to uphold standards of conduct, and just the basic non-compliance with procurement procedures. So then the question is, how then, or what is our role? What then becomes our role, and how can we be effective and efficient in this role of teaching and bringing about change in this domain? So within our public administration modules, we popularly focus on three theories, being deontology, utilitarianism, and virtue ethics. And when we do teach, and what we have found upon reflection is that when we teach and when we have taught these ethics or these theories, is that there's often we often overlook the influence of trauma and traumatic events on ethical decision-making. And the presumption is of a utopian lecture hall devoid of all complexities of real-world experiences. And we also found that ethics is also commonly taught from the assumption of critical thinking ability, without the consideration of whether or not this ability has actually been developed or how trauma has affected the trajectory of the particular development of critical thinking in our students. So the influence of lived or historical trauma on critical thinking ability is hardly considered. Then it got us to also consider the epistemological access, which has to do with the cognitive. We looked at the cognitive and the social access to the particular courses that we're teaching, and how that access is influenced by lived experiences and inherited, and for us, it's inherited or transgenerational trauma. So then it's important at this juncture for us to have a shared understanding of what historical trauma is, or inherited trauma, or transgenerational trauma, which is trauma that has been passed on from one generation to the next. Because one major challenge that we had was most of the students that we are teaching are students who probably did not experience the trauma that ensued from apartheid. They did not have the actual lived experience of apartheid. But they often and always talked about apartheid experiences and referred to that, which got us to question and got us to kind of look into the area of trauma and how it does affect individuals and how it affects families and our students. And that's when we realized that there is actually a whole school of thought around transgenerational trauma and the understanding that trauma can and actually is passed down from one generation to the next. So even if our students are born free, what we'd call born free, born up after apartheid, because they live in communities that experience this trauma, we have to also consider that the trauma and the effects, not just the effects, have been passed down onto them as well. And then the same kind of challenges that we'd find with people who actually experienced it firsthand would be found in our students as well. So, and for what we found is that most of the literature that pertains to historical trauma did not identify or did not classify trauma that came out of colonialism as being historical trauma or as being able to be passed on. And yet we did find some authors such as Ju Castro and Emerson who did define historical trauma as encompassing the shared recollection of societal turmoil and disturbances that have shaped a community's beliefs, values, and lifestyle, which is exactly what colonialism does and what it did. It gave African people a shared experience, which means even our recollection of what we experience is shared, it's societal turmoil. And so it's even easier to pass from one generation to the next, because if I don't hear it in my home, I'm hearing it next door, I'm hearing it from my aunt, my uncle, from my friends, and all the stories seem to collaborate the same thing. So historical trauma is understood as being intergenerationally transmitted, leading to long-term effects on those that are actually affected by the trauma. So what then we realized was that we were dealing with students who not only are grappling with the challenges of everyday life, but had this trauma, and which would affect how we teach and what we teach to our students. Now, the challenges in teaching the ethical theories, and we're talking about the ethical theories which we use, have their origins in Western culture. Beyond that, we found that the challenges that traumatized students have, or individuals who have experienced trauma, is number one, the issue of emotional dysregulation, where trauma survivors often have difficulty regulating their emotions or making it harder to engage or reflect and engage in critical discussions required for ethics education, which then informs us that our discussion, even our approach to ethics education, even our approach as we teach ethics, has to be trauma informed for our particulars because of their experiences. There's also quite a bit of mistrust of authority. And we found that oftentimes when we had ethical discussions, particularly those involving injustice and how and harm and moral dilemmas, oftentimes it would trigger trauma responses within our students and have a hyperarousal or disassociation, and which would then hinder learning. So we're seeing a pattern of behavior, pattern that we need to address by looking at our teaching pedagogy, looking at the theories and the models that we are using, and consider the epistemological access that our students actually have. We also noted a difficulty with abstract thinking, and this is what the literature did corroborate from what we were observing. Low self-esteem and guilt, fear of judgment, and as well as socio and economic and cultural barriers, where trauma survivors often from marginalized backgrounds often face additional socioeconomic and cultural challenges, which may influence their perspectives on ethics and justice in ways not addressed in traditional curricula. And why all this is important is, like, as I pointed out earlier, we're working in a public administration space, which means that our students are going into society to work as in the public sector. We're talking about water supply, access to water, electricity, everything that falls under the public service. So we are very concerned about how our students will behave once they get into the public sector, into the world of work. Just last year, 34, South Africa has got 200 257 municipalities all in all. And just last year, 34 out of the 257 received clean audits, only 34. And according to the Auditor's General Report, this is what you'll find there. This means that only about 13% of municipalities demonstrated sound financial management practices, which is quite a concerning statistic. So we want to influence change as far as it is possible as institutions of higher learning, if we are really going to turn things around within our societies, and if we are going to address the issue itself of colonization, of unfair treatment, and unfair distribution of resources. So the Auditor General noted that while 45 municipalities improved their audit outcomes since 2020 and 2021, 36 actually regressed. So we are seeing a regression, and the regression is mainly attributed to the instability that occurred in the transition to new administration, and also to unethical behavior within the municipalities. So we're looking to address the challenges that we are facing, not just in our academic institution, but the far-reaching implications of our students not understanding or not resonating with the lessons and what we are teaching them in our courses. So in order to decolonize a public administration pedagogy, our aim is obviously to dismantle the colonial legacies in education systems, particularly in post-colonial countries like South Africa, and use education not only as a tool for acquiring knowledge, but also a means of restoring cultural identity and agency to historically marginalized people. And this has got a lot to do with behavior change, where our people need to understand that we have agency to make the changes that we want to see in society. So by incorporating indigenous knowledge systems and African philosophy, we may demonstrate the traditional ways of being as being ethical in and of themselves. So ethics is not a foreign thing. It's not a Western thing. It's engraved within our African identity as well. And so, which means that we need to develop ethical frameworks and teach these ethical frameworks to our students within our context in higher education institutions as well. So as part of decolonizing the public administration pedagogy, we need to come up with theories that our students would resonate with. So in our review, we had a couple of findings and a few focus areas. So we've got the current perspectives. We were able to find out the current perspectives on ethic education in the literature and the critical gaps within pedagogy as it relates to our students, as well as the current research gaps and a few future directions for potential developments in the field. And here are some of the sources that we used, and I thank you.
Yeah, Q&A from what? Okay. Before we go to the Q&A, can we have Muchaku? Muchaku, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. So you're the next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Muchaku is from the University of Port Harcourt. Yeah, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Am I right here? Yeah, I hope you are able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. The title of the study is a systematic review of the determinants of a successful entrepreneurship education across universities in South Africa. So in most recent years and across many countries, scientists and policymakers have realized that entrepreneurship education offers a tremendous opportunity to create, to accelerate community development. As we are all aware that the role of university is to capacitate students, to equip them with the required skills so that they are able to respond to community needs. This has then resulted in an increased interest among universities in becoming efficient incubators for instilling a passion for positive entrepreneurship behavior, attitude, skills, etc., etc. So South Africa, just like other countries, is also facing challenges that then invites or makes entrepreneurship education quite important. The challenges ranges from unemployment, low income levels, poverty, food security, insecurity, etc., etc. So, but what is worrying is that despite this abundant evidence that the entrepreneurial education is a vital component and is relevant for economic growth, the influence of entrepreneurial education is still less in several developing countries, South Africa included. Sorry, let me just scroll down. But I also thought I should define the entrepreneurship education, which is broadly a process of empowering individuals to apply entrepreneurial behavior, attitudes, and competencies to create cultural, social, and economic value. So, entrepreneurship education can be achieved through modules within a degree, short courses, extra curricular activities. These pathways ensure that students can receive entrepreneurial education at the university. So a popular explanation is that universities have got a special societal obligation to propel entrepreneurship. However, at this juncture, the issue of entrepreneurial education, university being at the center of education, is still quite a challenge among several universities, not only in developing countries, but also in other developed communities. Thus, the conversation about the university's tremendous potential in creating an entrepreneurial society has been at the center of entrepreneurship education in South Africa. So perhaps just to clarify, this study, as indicated already, it's a systematic literature-based. So the methodology that we used to extract the relevant articles considered 4 major steps in searching and extracting these relevant articles. Initially, there was the initial search and also the extraction from the database. We used the Scopus, then article screening, further screening and analysis. So there's pardon? The search approach targeted widespread global literature, and it used the following search strings: entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial education, determinants, in order to be able to extract the relevant articles. So we also chose Scopus and Science Direct because of these databases were preferred because of their multidisciplinary in nature, and also that these databases also do not have gray literature, and also offers full text and peer-reviewed journals. We only targeted journals between 2012, from 2012, because this work started in 2023, so it was only from 2012 to 2023. So our initial search extracted about 204 articles that were later screened, and the final sample was 28, as shown on that diagram, the flowchart diagram that is shown there. So without wasting time, that was the process in extracting the articles from the databases, then showing all the stages until the final sample. So to analyze this data, we used Atlas TI software to help in generating networks. As you can see, this was the flowchart diagram that was generated electronically from Atlas TI data software. So one of the major results, or something that was quite interesting, is that several scholars, for example, believed that there was an exclusion of crucial stakeholders in the governance of university systems. And by crucial key stakeholders, I mean community members, I mean even the involvement of students themselves to take part in curriculum development. They were just involved just for the sake of procedure without really considering their inputs. So there was a recommendation around that university needs to invest much in ensuring that the education system listens to all the voices within the university system. One of also the determinants of successful entrepreneurship education was the ability to hire and retain staff. The results revealed that inexperienced and unqualified academics are less comfortable with learner-centered innovative approaches. Rather, they are more comfortable with the traditional, teaching methods, wherein the lecturer goes in front of the classroom and delivers on a subject without really getting inputs from students. There was also issues around training and development of employees, to say, although there are certain trainings, the trainings are not really targeting or customized enough to address the required skills among the staff. So there was this lack of capacity building, and universities fail to then produce graduates that so skilled, adequately enough to respond to the community needs. Another interesting result is also findings also on the lack of learning materials and facilities. On this issue, literature reviewed also indicated that although several universities were investing much in the infrastructure itself, they need to go beyond just investing in infrastructure without perhaps investing in the learning materials that are current, or learning materials that help these students to be one of the most champions of entrepreneurship in their communities. So essentially, entrepreneurship education is substantially affected by the lack of learning and teaching materials also in universities. Thus, the university, yes, is not only expected to create an environment for learning, but also should create experiences among students to ensure that these students, when they leave the university, they have the required experience to address or respond or provide skills that they were taught during their tenure of study. So my next slide is on the recommendations. Some of the recommendations, I highlighted them in this result slides, the previous slide. But perhaps what I found after the synthesis of this data is that there is need to build a school community for all students. Curriculum development and institutional priorities should rather focus on individual success of each student. A more engaging and understanding school environment will decrease not only school dropouts, but also promote entrepreneurial education among students. And also there's need to put university decisions in the hands of the community. This goes with the issue of curriculum development itself, involving students from the onset, from the start to the end. So universities can then advocate for a shift from a standardized control to a community-led and based mechanisms, which include community-elected university boards with the authority to decide on their learners. Then the last one is on the elevating entrepreneurship education as a strategic focus. So by this study suggests that it recommends that university would benefit significantly from elevating entrepreneurial education as a strategic focus, leading to its resourcing and prioritizing a compulsory course for all first entering students. So on the conclusion, this article highlights, this study highlights key internal challenges and success factors for entrepreneurial universities in South Africa. It highlights opportunities for promoting entrepreneurial education among universities in South Africa. The finding underscored the significant hurdles universities across South Africa face, including the deficiency in the policy itself and also limited stakeholder involvement in decision-making processes that makes it very difficult for universities then to address issues around entrepreneurial education. It is something, and entrepreneurship education, although it is much discussed. This study acknowledges that there is little understood in terms of entrepreneurial education. There is also need for comprehensive reforms with the higher education institutions to foster environment conducive for entrepreneurial learning and innovation. So moving forward, the future of research directions should rather focus on evaluating the long-term impact of these interventions on students' outcome, as well as exploring innovative pedagogical approaches. Thank you.
For entrepreneurship, yes, a lot of people just mention about it, but never give it a chance. So one of the takeaways I've had is that entrepreneurship education as a strategic focus highlights the key internal challenges and success factors in universities. So basically, this was like a recommendation requiring the curriculum builders, the stakeholders in universities to look at it and give it a try. Most of them just mention about it, entrepreneurship this, entrepreneurship that, but they ignore it and just leave it. Then he also talked about the element of inclusion. He talked about the element of inclusion. Yes, he looked at learners from all corners, learners who may want entrepreneurship, learners who may want other things. So that inclusion, he was recommending that universities should incorporate the element of inclusion, not forgetting the entrepreneurship part. So that was a great session. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our Q&A. So we are welcoming the questions. Our dear presenters will be ready to answer. We were welcoming feedback, any questions, any critiques. Thank you so much. Over to you, the audience. People in the building? Anyone? People online? Are we okay? Wow. You're coming? Okay, you're welcome, sir. Shadrach, there is a request if can you please share the slides of your presentation concerning the entrepreneurship education?
Oh, definitely. Thank you, I'll do so.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, anyone else? It seems people in this session are all okay. Yes, Dr. Jenny?
This walking to the microphone thing is a new experience. So thank you so much for your presentations and for bearing with us through the technical issues. I suppose I just wanted to ask both speakers, in terms of thinking about their disciplines and their areas of interest. I know Sibongile was talking about public administration, and Shadrach was talking about student entrepreneurship, and a student entrepreneurship education. I was wondering if we're thinking about an Afrocentric university and we're thinking about a critique of the university as it is now, how do you see your sort of areas of interest, either disciplinary or, entrepreneurship, as what role they play within the university in kind of like perpetuating or having potential to disrupt its current form? And for example, like something like entrepreneurship obviously fits very much into a particular, often fits into a particular capitalist model. So how do we also rethink these ideas for an African future that we might want going forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jenny. Muchaku, do you have anything to say about that, or we proceed?
I'm not sure if I got Jenny correctly, but if I did, I'll try to respond in this way. I always think the future for African university is to adapt. There is need to adapt. We have got unique challenges for our communities, and this entrepreneurship education is not basically about starting a business. It's rather more on being efficient in every wherever you are, having that entrepreneurial mind of being sustainable of some sort. So I would think of African universities, African universities, yes, adapting. There are certain elements that perhaps were being done that are not irrelevant per se, but that needs to be adapted so that we move with the time. But also being multidisciplinary in nature, taking elements from this field and from that side and integrating them and coming up with a comprehensive policy response to our community needs. I don't know if I responded well, Jenny.
Yeah, she's good. We have a question in the chat from Moses. How Afrocentric is the methodology used here? So dear Moses, I've not gotten you well. Could you please unmute and maybe make it clearer? Yes, Alobo Moses, can you unmute, please? Muchaku, can you get this question? Can you understand what you were trying to ask?
No, it's a very difficult question, to be honest. How Afrocentric is this methodology? I would say it's half-half. Of course, systematic literature reviews are associated with are more Eurocentric, but our indigenous knowledge is also embedded in these articles that we were writing. The methodology itself may be Eurocentric, but I think it then becomes a blend because the literature we were harvesting, the literature we extracted also covered, a bulk of indigenous knowledge within this. And if you check some of the findings, they were actually talking about issues around exclusion of community members, the voices within South Africa, and so forth and so forth. So these were studies that were carried out in South Africa, and that actually represented the views of many community members in the South African context. But to be honest, I wouldn't confidently say it was 100% or 90% Afrocentric.
Okay, thank you so much. Can someone please react to the first presentation? Any message for the authors? People online, people in the room? Yes, Dr. Jenny?
Oh, Sibongile, I also would be great if you had an answer to my question. I was interested in hearing from both presenters. Thank you.
Okay.
Did she get you?
Did you get my question? You need to reiterate anything?
Yes, I did get your question, but I wouldn't mind that you reiterated.
Okay, yeah. So basically just asking about, I believe you're talking about public administration, education, and I was just wanting to hear your thoughts around public administration, I suppose, as a discipline or a field of study or a field of education, and its place in the current university system that we deal with, and how it like plays into maybe the perpetuation of that system that we might want to critique, and then also your thoughts on if we're looking towards say an Afrocentric university or a university for an African future, how would you see that field of education kind of playing into that? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I get your question. I will respond by saying, I think what we are seeing with our students, because they're the future of the public service, and our discipline exists solely to resource that area of government, which is huge if you look at the implications of what we are doing and what we're required to do with our students. And what we have started to do is to kind of listen to what the students are saying, listening to the student voice as the first step towards even the issue of decolonization, and also how can we better shape the program in the context of the world that the students are living in, that we are living in. Why this is important is because I think I've been realizing with student engagement that young people have got their ideas of what the future, what their present looks like and what the future should look like. So in terms of crafting the place that public administration would have in the new university design, I believe it should come from a place of engagement, first of all, with the students, definitely, and also looking back. And what we have discovered so far with engagement with the students is they're questioning a lot what we're teaching them and what it means for them, and the practicality of the curriculum, whether or not it does work in the current world, and which is very important. So I can't particularly say right now where exactly and how that fits in the mold of a future university, because I believe that mold itself hasn't been well developed or well established because of the dynamic world and environment that we're living in. There's so many things that are changing, not just the environment, but the people that are living in it. So I'm not sure that I answered your question, probably because I don't have a concrete answer myself, but I have realized not so recent past that it's necessary to listen to all the voices, especially the voices of those that are going to occupy those spaces in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, that was really resourceful. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we were supposed to be having other two presenters. Unfortunately, they didn't confirm. We're supposed to have Thaudensi and Esikoe from the University of Dar es Salaam. They didn't confirm. We are supposed to also have Gabriel Mashaza, also from the University of Dar es Salaam. They didn't also confirm. So I would implore us, we all have the program, and when you look at their titles, they would really be enticing to listen to. Probably they have articles written, so I'm imploring us to go maybe read about them, read something about it. It would be great. So ladies and gentlemen, yeah, we had technical issues at first, but I'm glad that we are on time. Yeah, our session is coming to an end when you look at the program. Yeah, we are late by 4 minutes. So we are now going for tea, coffee, or networking. Thank you so much for hearkening to me. Thank you for your time. I've been Pamela at Kundile. Have a great evening.